Hey, you awesome folks! Thanks for taking this journey of discovery with your guide, Keith Haney. You're listening to the Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, your favorite podcast for everything from racial reconciliation to education innovation, justice reform, and leading change in the 21st century. This podcast is for people who love to be challenged with difficult topics, but want practical solutions to solve these challenging issues. Becoming Bridge Builders makes change possible. Each week on the podcast, Keith invites innovative thought leaders to share how they are building bridges in their area of expertise. You will hear breakthrough ideas and concepts that are changing the world. He's featuring guests who are best-selling authors, leaders at Microsoft, entrepreneurs, leading educators, professors, lawyers, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can be the bridge to the change you are seeking.
My guest today, Dr. Brad, struggled with chronic illness and began to manage his own condition with diet as a young child. He later learned to conquer Candida, a fungal-related digestive problem that has become systemic in himself. He did the same with Lyme disease and other co-infections when these started to wreak havoc on his own health. In combination with his doctorate and nearly 40 years of postgraduate studies in functional medicine and clinical experience, Dr. Brad has taken his knowledge to help people with the most disabling conditions back to full health. He himself no longer lives with these diseases, but enjoys the health that he longed for. We welcome Dr. Brad to the podcast. Well, how you doing, Dr. Brad? Good to have you on the podcast.
I'm having a pretty good day today. I got to sleep in a little bit. I've been working crazy hours, and it took quite a while to even wake myself up. And it's kind of an interesting thing. Set set a course of my life decades ago when Lord got a hold of me. I like to start my day with Him and end it with Him. And the revelations and the prayer issues and what He's starting to show of things is pretty rich in different times, and this morning was one of those where he's just showing me something about one of our sons that's making some major transitions in life, and he gets all locked up and just where he's at and all that. He's not communicating, and my wife finds out more from me in my prayer time than she does communicating with her son. And it's always spot on accurate, and it's just the morning woke up with that. And for Christmas, she got me a Matthew's Bible. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's the original English Bible, a compilation of Tyndale and Wycliffe's work. And it's all in Gothic print. And Gothic language and all that, and it's my own personal devotions has been in Spanish for over a decade.
Wow.
And when you change what you're doing, it makes you have to slow down and process in a different way.
Right, I can see that.
It's been pretty refreshing because they use things. It's like the King James. And the New King James and regular King James, people think that there's only one version. There's several accurate versions, but the King James is most likely to call a spade a spade. It doesn't use any of this political correctness whatsoever. And like 70% of that language came off the Matthew's Bible, so it's 75%. It's been an interesting process of trying to learn how to read Gothic print, which the letters aren't consistent, and they didn't have the same letters we have, and they pronounce words differently, and they spelled words differently, and you got all these things that slow you down.
Right.
And that's something about having a physical book. Like when you get into hermeneutics or something like that, if you have a physical books and a piece of paper, like a notebook that you're writing on, it is a whole different process than if you use a computer.
It's very true, yeah.
And it just, there's a way you just take it in. It becomes part of you because you're working with it rather than just this intellectual issue. Which that's why I have a problem with Greek myself. And the Bible was not written to be analyzed with logic and reasoning. It was written to give us revelation of the kingdom of heaven, and it's just the Greek gives you the reasoning and the logic, and it's just like that's a wrong approach. It was never written in that in the beginning. Might have been translated that way early, but it wasn't written that way.
Interesting. I love to ask my guests this question as we kind of get started to know you a little bit better. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Um, okay, this is a good one. Good context. Back when the Lord, I was getting a hold of me. I was in my, you know, pretty close to 20 when he got a hold of me. It was a process in the season, and he's leading me to do a bunch of things that are just terrifying to me, like quit work. I've been working since I was 11. Go to school. I hated school. I absolutely hated school. Get married. I'd never seen any family work anything like that, and I'm just frustrated, looking for all an example to follow. And I go through my neighborhood, and there's not one you could follow there. And I go through the family. My mom was the last of 13. There's a lot of family go through. There's nothing to follow there. I go through all my friends. There's nothing to follow there. And and there's nobody to mentor within fellowships and all that. And I've been in pretty much every level of ministry for pretty close to 50 years.
Wow.
Um, so, uh, and I've rubbed shoulders. I've been all over the world doing ministry, and the amount of people in ministry that have enough integrity that really reflect the kingdom of God is just so precious few. I don't think I could fill up all the fingers in one hand of the people I've met, and I've been, as I said, I've been all over at every level of function and all that, and I'm just crying out, Lord, where's my example? And this is what he told me. He says, don't worry about that. I'll teach you myself. Absolute best advice I've ever had. It drives you to be on your knees, on your face, in constant devotions, constantly seeking his heart, his vision, his wisdom, and his direction in everything.
That's really good because it reminds you that if you look to people for your heroes or for your examples, they will disappoint you because none of us are perfect. And we're all, as Paul reminds us, we all fall short of the glory of God. So you're going to have a hard time finding a true reflection of the glory of God inside of broken human beings. You might find a glimpse of God, but you won't see his full reflection inside of us. So that's a good reminder to us.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an interesting thing you bring that up. Biblically, it's possible to become perfect. And those people who live with that in front of them, those are the ones that actually have the biggest impact in the world. Doesn't mean they make it, but they strive
Right.
to get there. And those uh, those individuals who do that, and it's men and women all over the world, and it's not commonly not people in leadership. It's just people Lord gets a hold of, and they're serious, and they're honest, and they don't have a problem being naked before Him. They can draw you into those places. I was a young guy that was part of a fellowship. I invited him into my devotions on a fasting day for a little season, and we're laying on the floor in my office and just quiet before Lord. And after a while, he just lets out this great big groan. He goes, "I didn't know it could be like this."
Wow.
Yeah, it's just those who nurture that issue of drawing into his presence, that's what we need mentored.
That's awesome. You kind of, we talked this before we got on the podcast, and I'm just kind of curious for you in this season of your life, what has been on your mind recently that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Um, I'll try and put that in a simple way because I've got so many hats, it's ridiculous. Um, and there's, people ask if there's anything I can't do, and an honest answer is, well, I'm not sure. Let me try. Let me try that. Uh, I've just been into all kinds of things, and we do things with people's health that uh, is nothing short of miraculous. Um, People have been to the best specialists, the best clinics all over the world with absolute total failed care. We get them healthy again. And we're dealing with all aspects of everything in the natural and in the spiritual. My youngest daughter asked me one time, she goes, Dad, our state of health, is that because our lifestyle? Is that because of the way we eat? Is that because of the presence of God? What is it? And I looked at her and said, Krista, why would you want to try and take one of those out and test it? And then, the reality is people who are looking for healing in any aspect. Lord's had us run ministry schools, doing deliverance, teaching teams how to do that, and in such a non religious way um, that we can't we can't compartmentalize these things in life and isolate them because they're all this one cohesive, integrative thing that all work together. And it's very few that can have the heart or the desire to bring all that together. Because, in a doctor's standpoint, it makes you vulnerable. And doctors got really fragile egos. They don't like to be vulnerable. I've got pretty close to 30 years of prison ministry under my belt. And one day I'm going into the room where we do in ministry. And a few weeks before, a short period of time before that, Lord healed somebody in the room. It was a few weeks before that happened that some Southern Pentecostal got in there heavy-handed and pushing people over on the floor. And the whole prison, just the alarms go off and the guards come running into the rooms. You don't do the kind of stuff in a prison. It's not right in a fellowship. You just don't do that kind of stuff in a prison. And here I'm on all the monitors. This guard is in the door next to me. And as this is going on, yeah, I was in front of people, and something had happened in a fellowship, and I'm walking back and forth in front of the prisoners in there and going, and what would you do if God asked you what you want? What would you do? And this guy in the front, he finally goes, you're asking me? I go, yeah, what would you do? And he goes, well, I'd take it. I go, okay, here you are, Lord. You're setting me up. You're just setting me up. And I go, so what's going on with you? Well, he'd been working out the day before in the gym. He blew his shoulder out and he couldn't move his shoulder. It's like this. That's all he could do. And everybody in the room do it. Okay. All right, Lord, you got me just where you like me in this vulnerable spot. But you come on up to the front of the room. I'm standing on the side, leading worship from the side. I'm not in the front. I'm off to the side. Overhead showing up in the front. The Lord has me call him up front, and it has me just start looking at the countenance of other inmates and called up like 10 different inmates to surround him, lay their hands on him, start praying for him. And I'm halfway across the room on the other side, and all this is on monitors, and as all this is going on, you can tell the people that are on the monitors are calling the rest of the guards to come watch this because of the insanity that happened a few weeks before with that Southern Pentecostal guy. It's like, we got to really watch this
Right.
and see what's happening. And I never get any closer than half the room away. And as these guys are surrounding him and praying for him, I ask everybody else that's still sitting down. I go, any idea why the Lord had me call these guys up? And they don't. Said it's because every one of these guys has the countenance of spending time with the Lord. They carve out time. They have a devotional life, and you can see that in their countenance. And because they spend time with him, he can use them. And so they're surrounding him, and I'm talking to the rest of the prisoners, and wind that down, and finally just lift up a hand from halfway across the room and just say a real simple prayer, not much. Close it off and let everybody come back. And it looks like all the guys that surround him are walking 3 feet off the ground. God used them, and they're in a semblance of glory that is not natural, that they had not experienced before. And it's just a huge thing. And the guy comes and he sits down next to me, and I finally go, so how you feeling? I said, I don't know. Well, check it out. He starts moving his arm around. He's going, hey guys, look at this. You all know what happened to me. Yesterday I walked in. This is all I could do. And this is crazy. And everybody's watching this. The monitor's going, wow, this is amazing. So the next time I come in, the guard that was next door, she's asking me, so what are you going to speak on today? I said, I have no idea. And she looks at me funny. I go, yeah, that sounds pretty vulnerable and stuff in front of a bunch of prisoners, doesn't it? But the Lord doesn't allow me to prepare a message coming here. Whatever message comes from dialoguing with the inmates. And whatever's going on with them is where he directs us. And he meets us there every time.
Wow.
And I'm just looking at her. That's too vulnerable for most people. I understand that. But that's how he makes me function. It makes me absolutely, completely dependent on him.
It's a good place to start and always begin our ministry is being vulnerable to wherever God's leading. But you're right, that doesn't make us always comfortable to be in that place because we like to have that control over where we think things are going and where God's going to lead. When we started this discussion, I want to go back to something or ask you a question that we kind of talked about offline before we started this. We talked about purpose. I'd like to know, what is your why? What is your purpose? What gets you up in the morning?
For good 4.5 decades, my purpose is it's him and his kingdom. And it's an interesting thing that I don't ever want to do anything that displeases my king. And I've been I mine scripture for truth because truth gives us the banks on which the Spirit of God can move through in that river. And so I've really dug deeply into trying to gain a revelation of simple things. And for me, that's what it's always been. It's not been a vocation, it's a passion. And so, it's an interesting thing. I was just talking about vulnerability and transparency. I'm the same person to everybody in every situation. I did a wedding for a young man that I've known for quite a while, halfway across the country from where I live right now. And one of the uncles came up to me and asked me, so how many kids do you have? And I said, I have no clue. He asked me how many children, not kids, how many children. I said, I have no clue. And he's going, man, that sounds pretty presumptuous. And I said, no, it's not, because I've been with that many women that I don't know. It's because the Lord made me into something that I never experienced in my entire life. He made me into a father, and the amount of people who look to me as a dad, I can't even count. And he's looking at me like that's the oddest thing he'd ever heard in his life. But by the end of the wedding, he came up to me. He says, I see what you meant, just in the way I interact with people. And it's not condescending, it's horizontal, and it's not this hierarchy of gaining position. It's just, when you look at it biblically, there's only two characters biblically that can really be fathers in a spiritual sense. Elijah was the first one who set up prophetic schools, and he was just a recluse, and he was socially just distant to everybody. He worked with his sheep, and God gave him something, and he'd go do something fiery, and then he'd go be his recluse again, until Lord told him to anoint Elisha prophet in his stead. And Elisha was a covenantal man, and he developed that covenantal aspect into Elijah. And by the end of his life, he's got these at least two prophetic schools with 50 in each school calling him father. Paul in his epistles says you have many teachers, but you don't have many fathers. And it's pretty much those aspects in the government of God here on the earth that really can do that. And it's just one of those things that I'd never seen before. I grew up in an extremely dysfunctional home, extremely dysfunctional home, and an extremely dysfunctional part of the country, an extremely dysfunctional season of life, and season of time. So there's just no history of anything of what he's forged me into being, spending that time and hanging on to that. I'll teach you myself. It's not like a one-time lesson. This is a lifetime of interaction to try and gain those truths, and those change in different seasons and all that. You get different revelations of things, and it's like, okay, that's what drives me.
Wow. Interesting. I want to get into your health for you, because I think that's a big part of what you do too. I know you have a lot of different irons and a lot of different fires, but let's talk about why you started Health for You.
Pretty simple. When I was a young kid, 5 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night with gut-wrenching pain, and with first a bunch of trips into the hospital. They said I had inflamed intestines. They did some weird things to me, and say, do this, you'll be better. And I started off life at 5 years old with just a bunch of chronic health issues that I started cooking when I was 5, because if I ate the way the rest of the family ate, I just felt horrible, vertigo and sick, and all kinds of other stuff. So I started cooking, and people think, what? You start managing your health at 5 years of age? Well, you eat something, you feel sick, and you do that over and over, and you feel sick, and you do something different, you feel better. It's like, wow, I'm going to experiment with this. I don't want to feel sick all the time. And, it got way worse. A couple years later, we went on a family vacation. I came home with some weird thing where my world just spun around. I had the vertigo where I was like a drunken sailor. extremely athletic, extremely coordinated, but extreme vertigo in everything that I did. And makes you have to have this intense focus to be able to accomplish pretty much anything. And um, the cooking developed even more as far as that goes. And it's something that I had all kinds of different aspects of chronic health, chronic ear infections, chronic throat infections, fungal infections. Later in life, I got Lyme disease. I never got any answers from any doctor anywhere I went. And I had to figure all those out myself. And I realized, from 5 years old on, no answers to anything. I wrote a book. It's called Exposing Lyme and Chronic Illness. Published that probably about a year ago. I'd written half of that book before and published a different title, and it really didn't go anywhere because Amazon canceled us and some other things. And when you look at our history of things, the book is written in a way that I've never seen anything written. It's cause and effect of all the interactive things that go on with all aspects of chronic illness. Candida leaky gut is pretty much the root cause of virtually almost all chronic illness. And Lyme disease is the king of chronic. If anything's going to go wrong, it's going to just fall apart with Lyme disease. So gut issues are pretty much our specialty, and with that, we were able to resolve infertility issues, gut issues, hormone issues, autoimmune problems, everything that everybody struggles with.
So,
We can address everything.
yeah, tell us more about the gut issue. I'm curious about that. You said most things you just listed start from gut issues. I think you said leaky gut, right?
Right.
So what is that? What is that for those of us who haven't delved into that like you have? What does that mean for us, a leaky gut?
The gut is a very interesting organ. A lot of people say it's an external organ because food enters it and exits and it never gets inside of us. But when we look at the gut wall, the lining is only one cell layer thick. It's not tough like our skin. One cell layer thick. There's a cottony layer underneath that has half your immune system, blood vessels, and nerves. Nervous system in the gut. They had wondered for a while if it was more extensive than the brain. It's not, but it's extremely extensive, and that communicates with the brain. Outside of that is a layer of muscles. Some go round, some go lengthwise, and that's what creates these wave-like contractions to move food through called peristalsis. And there's connective tissue on the outside, and it's ultra thin. You can see right through it. You can you can see food inside of it if you ever do any butchering or you see sausage. Classic sausage is just small intestines. They've just been washed, packed with food. You can see the food right through it. That's how thin it is. The lining has something called microvilli in it. And the microvilli is like if you take your fingers and you hold them up in front of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The bumps are just like your fingers, like that. That increases the surface area of your gut 400 times. It's crazy how much it increases it. And those microvilli, they produce a mucus that comes out and it covers the microvilli over the top and fills in between. And then there's this microbial um, host that lives inside of that mucus. It's mostly bacteria. There'll be yeast in there, viruses in there, parasites in there, all kinds of different things. And it does most of the function of the gut. It does the digestion. It food can't touch the microvilli. The microbial host, the flora, it goes up and it interacts with the food and brings the nutrients back. That's how dirt and plant roots work. It's the microbes that bring all the nutrients to the roots of the plant. That's how our guts work. And it's, God, he makes all these creative, interactive things that are out there that once he plans it, it doesn't make it different for all the different forms of life. They're pretty consistent all the way through, which is interesting. The pH we need for health inside of us, same pH that soil needs. It's the same pH that bugs need and fish and amphibians and the whole host of everything that's out there. So he didn't recreate something different with everything. Whenever there's an inflammatory response inside of the gut, there's a bunch of reasons it can cause that. These microvilli, they atrophy, so it's like you're looking just at your knuckles.
Mm.
There's nothing to produce mucus. There's no place for that microbial coating to live, and it flushes down the toilet and allows pathogens to grow in there. The biggest pathogen is Candida. It's got three forms and closely associated with the fourth. The yeast form is what most people try and deal with. There's a fungal form, fungal parasite form, which can float around and take up residence in any tissue in the body, and it's closely associated with mold. Some of these will morph into mold and some don't. Um, as soon as you have that inflammatory response like this, the gut starts to leak. As it leaks, it lets undigested foods, microbes, parts of microbes, and all kinds of toxic issues to get into the bloodstream, which inflames the underlayer, and it creates an autoimmune response within the lining, which opens it up like you could drive a bus through it, and it just makes it. There's a couple different ways where that happens. Um, but it opens it up so you have this huge toxic flow that goes from inside of the gut into the bloodstream. That overwhelms the liver. All the circulation from the gut, return from the gut, goes straight to liver. Doesn't go anywhere else first. Goes straight to liver. The liver's supposed to catch all the microbes that escape, supposed to catch all the toxins that escape, catch all the nutrients, and all that, and it overwhelms the liver, so the liver can't keep that. Our toxins mostly come in through the gut, and they're supposed to stay in this close loop from the gut to liver. The liver dumps it back into the gut. What the gut can't process and excrete, it takes it back to the liver. It's supposed to stay in there, but when the liver's overwhelmed, it goes systemic. And you have this systemic toxicity. Systemic toxicity, that's the root cause of all your hormone dysregulation, all your thyroid issues, Hashimoto's, is just toxicity. The amount of women all the way up in their 80s that they've been on medications for years, they've gotten off their medications, their energy comes back, their skin becomes thick and vibrant and full of color. Their hair starts to grow back and their libido comes back. They just get giddy. Uh, you got all of these different things that are all linked to that. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said all disease starts in the gut. Science has pretty well proved that out, and with us, I got pretty close to 40 years of working clinically with people with the worst nightmares out there. And in that 40 years, every time we've shared a patient with the most prestigious clinics and the best specialists in any field, every patient we've shared with those institutions, we beat them in diagnostics, in care, and resolution, bar none. And that's humbling to me.
Wow, it is.
That's not something that you go, wow, look how great I am. We had moved from a different part of the country years back, and people were asking us how to figure out how to work with him at a distance. I didn't have a belief system for it. I just didn't. But we get too religious in different ways, and it just locks us up with different things. And it's just like we realized, okay, the Lord is moving us. And so I'm going to have to test this out. So we started testing out, working with people at a distance, farther and farther distance. And the end of that testing, I was testing people blindly, didn't know who they were, didn't know what they had. do pretty full evaluation. Evaluations we do are extremely extensive. Um, did pretty close to full evaluation, then brought him back in the office and did those in person. And and I was shocked about the results. Guess what the difference was?
What's that?
I thought there was one point that we tested was different, and my wife said, "Are you sure? Check this," and I checked that, and they were identical. That's statistically impossible, and it's way beyond what anyone could ever expect. What that made me realize is the Lord had given us an accuracy and an authority to deal with things that's completely unnatural simply because what we do with integrity. And that's humbling. That's not like, oh, wow, look how great I am. Because
Right.
that's a gift. I mean, that is just, it's a gift. And as long as I stay in honor of what we talked about in the first place, as long as I stay in stewardship with the right heart, that gift should stay. And, we do know that Lord says the gifts of the Lord are without repentance. You could look at that a whole bunch of different ways. Um, but that's not something I would ever want to test or anything. It's just one of those things. When you take a youth, like say somebody early teenagers all the way through probably early 20s, and you let them minister and have the power of God flow through them, they're hooked for life. It's like, wow, God can use me. And it's not like how great I am. It's a humbling thing. It's just really huge. And you start to experience things like that as something you never want to end and go away. You jealously hold on to what allowed you to have it in the first place, which is that devotional life that we talked about at the beginning.
You talk about that most things start in the gut. So as you work with people, like for example, someone I know a lot of people who talk when they have chronic fatigue, and you talk about how that's because there's enzymes and toxins basically spilling from the gut. So as you deal with somebody who's dealing with those kind of things, what kind of, because I don't want to tell you don't do this online, but what kind of things should they be looking into if that's an issue they've been dealing with? I know a lot of people who have that, their lives are just completely impacted by the fact they don't have any energy.
Okay, I'll give you a short explanation on how that happens from the gut.
Sure.
And with that, then I'll let you know kind of what you can do. The two most sensitive organs to the toxins spill out of the gut that get hit first is the thyroid and the adrenal. Your thyroid gives your basic metabolic rate, well, the amount of energy that all your cells burn. Your adrenal gives you what you're going to burn when you're stressed out. The thyroid does that by these controlling the little energy factories in all your cells called mitochondria. The thyroid hormones determine how many mitochondria you have in every cell, how big they are, and how active they are. The toxins that spill out through the gut and all that, they depress the thyroid. Thyroid hormones depress. It depresses the mitochondrial function, and the cells are no longer able to make energy the normal way. They make it without oxygen, creates lactic acid, which becomes an irritant, and that's where you get your trigger points, your fibromyalgia, and all of those other things that go on. So it's pretty easy to resolve that, but you can't address the fibromyalgia directly, and you can't address the chronic fatigue because they're a symptom of what the real problem is. And the problem is toxins taking out the thyroid. So you got to heal a gut wall. You've got to find out what food intolerances are there. You gotta clean those up. You gotta add basic nutrients back into their life. And you walk through them, fixing the flora, the gut lining with all the microvilli and all that. And that's the hardest organ to fix in the body. It takes the longest to address that. Somebody can have full-blown Lyme disease that's been going on for years. You can clear the Lyme disease in a matter of a month and a half, 2 months. One of the parasites that are with it is a Babesia. The worst form is divergens. That can take 4 months. It's going to take well over 6 months to heal a gut. And whatever you're doing with that is going to change quite a bit. But something that you can do right away, we're mostly water, and having a clean water supply is absolutely vital to being able to build healthy cells. The highest energy, cleanest, most healing water there is steam distilled water. You can buy a steam distiller off of Amazon for like $140, and you get your best water from that. All city water is toxic. It should be run through a zero water pitcher if you don't have the funds to get a whole house filtration system. The best pour through filter is zero. Clinically, we've been testing that for a long period of time, and all the independent studies prove that it outperforms everything else out there. Berkey is pretty much a joke. It doesn't do anything, and they won't even allow testing to run through it. There are class action suits and a bunch of other problems with it. Aquasana is the best whole house that's out there, and they're both pretty cheap as far as that goes. Same with the independent studies and all that. So it starts with water. Uh, the primary foods that are the most toxic to deal with is corn and anything that feeds off of corn, wheat, anything that feeds off of that. And most of that is not because of the GMO. The GMO is too weak to grow in itself, so they got to use these herbicides and pesticides that are like nuclear bombs that destroy everything. And it's the thing with commercially grown foods in America here is they're so toxic from herbicides and pesticides that they can't even be sold in other countries. Russia did studies on our corn and found it increased cancer rates by 4 to 7 times. China, they outlawed it. China looked at that. That study, they outlawed it there. China buys our corn to make toxic byproducts to sell them back to the U.S., but they won't use it over in their country. I mean, it's just terrible. So those two things, sugar and dairy, those are some things that just because the way those industries are run, those should be taken out. And it's going to take some basic nutrients and some really focused care to do that. Good multi, the best multi in the country 3 years ago, before all the pandemic and all that is worthless. It's useless now. Took us a long time to find something to replace that. That's been on back order for 5 months. They can't get the ingredients to make it. And we've found 2 other products. One we found recently that is the best one that's out there. So if you get it off the shelf at a store, it's worthless.
Hmm.
Even the professional supply, there's one out of hundreds of companies. Actually, 2 or 3, but one of those has been one of those companies with a different fractions has just been in back order for months, so you can't get it. Good quality fish oil. 75% of the fish oil in the stores is rancid before you buy it. It's worthless. Most of what most doctors are selling is worthless. And good calcium. The best calcium that you can get in North America with the supply chain disruption with the pandemic, it got ruined. We've been scrambling, trying to find some others. We finally find one that's pretty close to that good 4 years later. And I'm the only doctor in the different suppliers we use, distributors and companies. There's probably 200,000 plus doctors in the downline. I'm the only one in all of those companies and over 200,000 doctors who tests all the products on every individual on an individual basis. And when something doesn't work, I can define which fraction is the problem and when it changed. I'm the only one in close to 200,000 docs. And once again, that's not a pride issue. That's just, it's the way God made me. It's a gift that he does, and it's because the people we work with are so sick, it requires that level of care that you've got to constantly have to hone it in
Wow.
and find those things, because the best specialists in the world are getting nowhere with those. We have a higher rate of giving people who've been to the best specialists in the world their life back than they do of those people. We have a higher rate of getting those people completely healthy again than they do of their general people just walking in.
So, Doc, I'm curious. We talked a little bit about gut health. What should someone who suspects and most likely what you're talking about, most people have gut health issues. Where should they start to begin to heal their gut?
Two issues that I'll say. The book that I talked about publishing a while ago. I one chiropractor, my mom's, he got a hold of a copy and he goes, everybody should have this on their shelf. He's never seen anything like it. And I don't believe that anything is approached in the way that it's approached. It's extremely well researched. And if you want to know how to address different things, that'll give you cause and effect of what and some really basic understanding of how to address things. One of my beta readers, she had all kinds of health issues. Diabetes was one of them. She read the book, changed her diet to the way the book describes, and she's offered diabetes meds. And that's pretty huge off of a book. No testing, nothing, just off of a book. That's how powerful the book is. And if somebody's had something, been to a bunch of docs, they're not going to be able to do it on their own. Get a hold of us, healthfullyou.com, and we can figure things out. I work with people all over the world. Working with somebody on the other side of the world who went to a clinic where it's 50,000 a week.
Wow.
No help. And we've changed their complete metabolic function around. I mean, it's never been like this.
It's pretty impressive. Where can people find your book? And tell us the name of the book again.
The title of the book is Exposing Lyme and Chronic Illness. Best way to find that is go to my website, and there's a tab on it that says Lyme book. That's the best way to find it.
And what's your website again? Give it to the audience.
It's healthfullyou.com, HEALTHFULLY, the letter U.com.
So, Doc, I want to ask you this as we wrap things up. This has been a great conversation. What do you want your legacy to be?
It's an interesting thing. You asked that. I'll share with this because it puts it in the right perspective. Years ago, part of an apostolic group, and one of those guys asked one of the other guys, somebody had come up to him, they needed some deliverance, and they didn't know really much anything about it. And they asked the senior apostolic guy in that group and said, who do we get? And that guy said, there's only one person in this whole region that can do anything with that. You got to get a hold of the Brad. And so he asked me, and I go, yeah, sure. Where is it? Where do you want to meet? When? I show up, and a black lab comes out just angry and snarling and growling in my car, and that's what I meet. And I just crack my door of my car, and I'm talking to the dog and calming the dog down. I give it time, and then I start petting the dog, and I get out, and the guy that we needed deliverance from, he comes out, and I'm interacting with him just casually out on his outside in the porch. He's up the stairs for quite a while, and we go in the house. And he's a couple different jobs. One of them's a carpenter. He's just done an impeccable job with the place, and I've been a custom builder for 50 years too. So, I'm just giving appreciation for that. And we end up in the living room talking about things of life and just slowly wind into what's going on with him and just nail what it was. He was just perpetuating a demonic thing that had happened to him when he was young. He was molested when he was young, and it is just something that took root, and no one knew how to deal with it. He'd been to some of the biggest names in the industry, and everybody with their heavy-handed name and claim stuff that just did nothing for him, and just slowly drew him into things, no voice inflections any higher than this, and bring him through his own deliverance. So he did it. I didn't. He did it himself. And I ran into, left and ran into him and his wife at, I think it was a funeral a couple of weeks later. I don't go to funerals much, so it's odd for me to be there. But anyway, I ran into his wife, and I said, so how's things been since that night? She goes, oh, we went to bed that night just wrapped up in each other's arms and just bawled ourselves to sleep. We just wept. So we woke up in the morning, we made love, and she rolls her head and she goes, and it was wonderful. He had devastated that arena with what he had done. And they're back rebuilding their life. And he came up after a while and talked with him, and he goes, I don't get it. You approach this different than anybody I'd ever seen. I've been, he just rattled off this huge list of names of all these people to try to get him set free, and just nobody was effective. And he goes, and you come in just casual, sharing life, and we're talking about just simple things of life. You slowly roll into doing what you're doing, just so non-dramatic, so non-threatening, so non-issue, and so effective. I don't get what's with everybody else and what they're doing. And it's something that I learned in the ministry schools that was a huge thing. The more I gave away, the more the Lord gave me. And it just became a conduit of doing things. And all I want my legacy to be is this guy was a conduit, just non-judgmental, no attitudes, no arrogance. You can tell the people that have spent time with me doing ministry because we all function the same way. We wait on the Lord till he shows us something. He's either going to say something, reveal something, give us some kind of impression. We don't do anything until then. And this only legacy that has any value is how much you can pour out to draw people into a kingdom legacy. It's the only real value we have here on earth.
Wow, that's powerful. So, Doc, one more time, where can people find you and connect with you on social media?
We're on Instagram at Healthfully You. We're on Facebook. And I've been working on a house, so I haven't done anything on these for a month. But we're Candida, Lyme, and chronic illness on Facebook. And both those links are on our website at healthfullyu.com. And, you know, to share this, pretty interesting. A while back, we had a 5-year-old girl that spent 5.5 days in a research hospital connected to one of the most prestigious clinics in the world, doing scans and tests for 5.5 days. I had no idea what's going on. Somebody begged the parents to work with us. They got a hold of us. We had them fill out some paperwork. We did evaluation that night. Had them do some things. The next morning, the little girl was out of bed. 3 days later, outside. And 6 months down the road, she's healthier than she's ever been. She's over 1,000 miles away. We never saw her face to face. Able to do things with that kind of accuracy consistently. And it sounds surrealistic, but it's not.
Wow.
It's just an absolute fact. And it doesn't matter where people are. We're working people in Europe, Australia, other parts of the world. It doesn't matter where somebody is. We can do the same thing.
Well, Doc, thanks so much for what you do, because health is the one thing that God has given us as a gift, so we can be productive in our time on this planet to do the work He's called us to do. So the fact you're helping people get back on their feet and live out their fullest life and the glory of God is a powerful witness to what you do.
Yeah. My own belief is, you know, when you look at the Gospels, Jesus had 3 ministries. He taught so that people could understand there's such a thing as a kingdom. He healed to prove its effect. But his primary ministry, his primary focus was deliverance, because that's what sets people free, to be able to come into the kingdom and live their fullest.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Doc, for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it, and blessings on what you do.
Thanks for the invite. I've enjoyed this. I hope you did too.
I did. It was really great. Thank you.
All right. Have an awesome day. Appreciate it.
You too.
Okay. Bye.
Do you know that most entrepreneurs hit a revenue ceiling and have no idea why? They're working harder, spending more money, running more ads, but revenue stays flat. My friend Dr. Noah St. John calls this the invisible break. He's giving our listeners a free revenue ceiling audit to help you see what's really holding you back. You'll get a free 30-day membership to NoahBot, giving you access to Dr. Noah's 30 years of experience to help you reach your next level. But hurry, because there's only 50 available this month. So if you're tired of being stuck at the same revenue level and want to finally break through, get your free revenue ceiling audit at drnoahvault.com in the affiliate link that'll be listed in the show notes.